Bible defines that there's only three kinds of people on earth, and that is good people, evil people, and fools. Those are the three kinds of people. And good people seek to do God's will. Evil people seek to thwart God's will, and fools can't tell the difference from one to the
Yeah.
other.
I'm excited to be back with my good friend Thomas Hampson. Tom's a crime reporter, crime investigator, was undercover for child sex trafficking, child porn. I mean, you've seen it all, Thomas. You've seen a lot of stuff in your career, didn't you?
I have, yes.
Thank goodness it's all slowing down.
No, it's not.
Well, I'm excited to have you on as always. It's always good to see you. I speak so much about the spiritual battle going on, and I always like to be grounded by you. I know that you understand that it's a spiritual battle too, but you investigate real practical stuff, and I think it's so good because when I'm speaking about some things, I sometimes say, well, I can't believe this. It can't be true. All this evil can't be true. And then I always look for you to bring me the perspective to say, yeah, Jack, it's true.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So what have you been? Go ahead. I was just going to ask you what you're working on because I always know you're investigating other things and one thing after another. So tell us a little bit about what you've been doing lately.
Well, one of the things I'm looking into now is just what's happening to our country and the division that's going on here that is similar to the division we had back in the 60s and 70s when I first started working for government. During the late 60s, I was in the Air Force intelligence, and I was over in Europe, and at the time they had all these leftist organizations were getting started. Rudy Dutschke in Germany, the Baader-Meinhof gang, all these organizations were getting started. And here, of course, we had the anti-war activism and the riots here in the United States, and that continued into the 70s. And today we're seeing the same kind of thing. And I'm looking at similarities, but one of the things I see is a big difference. Back in those days, in the 60s and 70s, there was a difference of opinion about whether or not the United States should be, or the West, that all of the Western countries should be involved in a war in Vietnam. And that's clearly a political kind of decision. But today, and it didn't have to do with any particular laws that were on the books already, but today the big division is around illegal immigration. It's around what is a man and what is a woman. These are so we have the immigration issue, which is a legal issue. There are laws on the books that nobody seems to be trying to change. There's nobody in power that's trying to change them. Nobody is proposing that they change them. They just say we should ignore them. So basically, we should ignore the laws, break the law. We shouldn't prosecute them because they've been oppressed. And so there's that difference that I see today is almost seems more insane than what was going on in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I mean, there was I was one of the last guys, I graduated from high school in 1975. Well, if you graduated in 73, you still signed up for the draft. They weren't really taking guys. They were not taking guys, I don't think, after 72. By 74, they didn't take anybody. And by 75, my year, we went to sign up for the draft, and they told us you didn't have to sign up for the draft.
Right.
And so, of course, we didn't. And but we were not excited about going because by then it had become, and like you said, a political issue where we didn't know if it was the right thing to do anymore. And so I think there could be good, two sides of that, right? We saw some people say, hey, if communism is allowed to spread, it's going to keep spreading, blah, blah, blah. So we had some dialogue about that. Today, that communism, that train of thought, right, atheism, has infiltrated to the point in our country. And atheism really, to me, is just it's not that you don't believe in God. In fact, I think they do believe in God, but they don't want to, they want to throw them out of the culture, right? Out of their lives, out of the culture.
They're classically what evil is in the Bible, that somebody is purposely working to thwart the will of God. And that is atheism. It's an effort to counter God's will on earth.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tom. And it's just to stay on that for a second, is that, yeah, it's taking good out, right? God.
Yes.
And Jesus said, only God is good. So to your point, taking God out, taking good out of people's lives. We see this with all the work that we're doing with stolen innocence, and people actually stealing the innocence and obliterating the moral imaginations of children and sex
And
trafficking
being
children
gleeful about it and
and being
actually
gleeful.
being enthusiastic about it.
And so let's just make this definition for people, because I think it's a good point. You can have bad people out there. I think some of the people that are robbing these mobs, that are robbing these stores, these young people, they're bad. They're doing bad things. They become bad people. But you can rob, you can lie, you can even kill people and be a bad person, but not really be an evil person.
Right, yeah.
Where an evil person comes in and he does it not for something, not for gain, right? So these mobs go in and they'll do bad things to get clothes, to get money, to get drugs, to get all kinds of things.
Well, the
But
Bi
evil, let me just, I'll just say this, Tom, but evil, you're doing it just to take out the good.
right.
You have no rationale. And I think, and I'll throw this back at you, I think that's why people are struggling and saying that doesn't make rational sense. And if they're evil people doing it, it won't make rational sense.
Well, the Bible defines that there's only 3 kinds of people on earth, and that is good people, evil people, and fools. Those are the 3 kinds of people. And good people seek to do God's will. Evil people seek to thwart God's will, and fools can't tell the difference from one to the
Yeah.
other. They just kinda operate on their whatever motivates them at the moment. And I think the majority of people that we see that are out there doing bad things are people that fall into the category of being a fool.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And so, but there are a number of evil people out there that are actively seeking to do everything contrary to God's will. And I think, look, God's will is for people to recognize that there are male and female. So anybody that's out there trying to promote the idea that a male can become a female, that is an evil person, or is so deluded that they don't know what reality is.
Yeah.
But the main thing that we've got going right now is people who are let's look at what's happening in Chicago and Portland. We have all this violence that's going on around the immigration issue. People seem to think that this is a good way to operate, that this is the way that we're supposed to operate. What's happened is all of the radicals in the 60s and 70s who weren't part of a political party have basically taken over the Democrat Party.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of these radicals that was back there in the 60s and 70s later became a Democrat. Karen Bass, Vince Ramos' brigade, she was a total communist. She's the mayor of Los Angeles. Bernie Sanders was a activist, anti-war activist during the 60s and 70s.
And you can hear him mocking. I mean, they mock God. I mean, you can see, getting back to our point, not to berate it, but they visibly, actively mock God in the public square, and you can see that these are evil. These are evil. AOC, I think, has become evil, even if she might have been naive in the beginning, Tom, but she's making her own decisions now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't really. The ones that promote the idea of being anti-God, those are the ones that are definitely the evil ones that you can identify as being evil. Most of them, I think, still fall into the category of being a fool. But the concern that I have is I'm not sure how to deal with it. In the 60s and 70s, we could address this division in a political way. You could compromise with people, like with the anti-war movement decreased once they decided to pull out of Vietnam, which I think was a mistake. But really, what really triggered it was they stopped drafting people. Now, once somebody wasn't concerned about being drafted, they lost interest in being
No, that's
contrary to
right.
it for the most
That's
of them.
right. Yeah. That's another great point. That's how when bad things, right? Again, whether you agree or disagree, whether bad things happen, that's how they usually do happen. They either get exhausted,
Right.
you either agree, or it just falls by the wayside and another issue comes up. But evil people that we're talking about now, like like the Bernie Sanders of the world, the Pritzkers of the world, those people are going to just do rebellion after rebellion, just for rebellion's sake, right? Always taking out the good. And Tom, it doesn't matter to them whether it's a gender, whether it's the border, whether it's climate. You see vaccines, whatever it is, whatever they're going to do, 1619 projects in the schools. And you say, well, why are they doing all these things? How are they connected? They're connected because they all are going after the good, all creating division among people, right? For power, money, control, all those things.
Well, and that's really one of the things that even back in the 50s that the Communist Party was trying to, to foment chaos within the United States and create division and foment division, throughout the country in every sphere. And we see that going on now. It's in 2020 when they had the riots after the lockdown. They had the riots over George Floyd's death. Black Lives Matters wound up getting tens of millions of dollars of donations from major corporations, which I don't know, they lost their minds supporting an organization like that. Today, what was it? I just did an article uh, about the Chicago Teachers Union honoring Asada Shakur, who just died.
Yeah, let's break that open for our audience a little bit, will you?
Well, Asada Shakur was her real name. Her original name was Joanne Chesimard, and she was a member of the Black Liberation Army. And she and several other members were stopped by New Jersey Highway Patrol, and they got in a gun battle, and they killed this one patrolman Forrester, and she was convicted, sentenced to prison. The Black Liberation Army broke her out of prison, fled, and she wound up going to Cuba and getting protected by Castro in Cuba. So she lived a protected life in Cuba for her whole life. And she's been one of these people that the left has revered as somebody who was a freedom fighter and somebody that was interested in promoting the rights of people.
What was she interested in? I mean, what did she stand for? In other words, did she have some kind of a cause, Tom, that you can remember?
Well,
Because I don't remember what their actual stance was. Just to take down the government, or
yeah, the Black Liberation Army was a spinoff of the Black Panthers, and they were a radical spinoff of the Black Panthers. They were kind of like the Symbionese Liberation Army was even more radical. So they had a bunch of these radical groups that were running around back in the 60s and 70s, and they were working to overthrow the government and take power. And one of the things that the Black Panthers said, all power comes from the barrel of a gun. And so that they were looking for an armed revolution against the United States. And they supported their cause by doing bank robberies and other kinds of crimes. And that's one of the reasons why this group was running around armed, because they were doing bad things.
who gave them, Tom? Who gave them an award? I think that's what brought it up, right?
Right.
Somebody was awarding them.
The Chicago Teachers Union
That's
honored
right.
them
Yeah.
in a post on
Yes.
X.
Wait,
But the other
pause on
thing
that for a second.
yeah.
The Chicago Teachers Union.
Right.
I mean, what do they have? I mean, for anybody, first of all, honoring somebody that murders, another person, you have to be very careful about their cause, huh? Before you start to honor somebody like that. Not that you can't kill people in self-defense, et cetera, but that's not the case here. But the Chicago Teachers Union, what was their motive, Tom, for doing something like this?
Well, the Chicago Teachers Union is a communist organization. It started off, it was Local 1 of the Chicago Teachers Union was taken over by a radical group of teachers who were openly communist. And so they took it over several years ago, and they still run it right now. That's one of the reasons why, because they control it. The 1619 project is part of the standard curricula in Chicago public schools, which is a rag of a history. Totally wrong.
And just again, for people that don't know, the 1619 project, in essence, says that the United States is systemically racist. Not that there weren't racists. We understand that, right? We understand that there is racism, and this still goes on today. But to say that our country is systemically racist, what they say is you can't do anything about it. If you're white, you're a white nationalist, Christian, you are systemically racist, which is really bad because it's going to cause division, and there's nothing you can do except a violent extremist taking you out,
Well, yeah,
and
because what they say is that we were founded for a nefarious
slavery.
purpose. Therefore, there's nothing good about our founding principles or documents, so it has to be completely wiped out and started, and we have to restart from scratch, from the foundation. We have to build ourselves back up from the foundation, and I mean, even the foundation has to be completely rooted out and changed.
Which
So that's
which
what
which which Tom? Again, I'm assuming some of our audience don't realize this, but that's what Marxists do.
right.
It's always a new
Yeah.
revolution. They never get to their utopia. They never have. They never will. But history has proven this, don't they? They're always looking for the next revolution.
Right. So my concern, and the thing I'm looking at now is even the whole issue of left and right and people, these ICE agents are being referred to on X, on Facebook by politicians as being Nazis, stormtroopers, Gestapo. Well, this makes their career and their work even more dangerous than it already is. You have to wonder, they are out there trying to catch people who have already broken U.S. laws. And I'm not talking just about breaking the law of coming in here illegally. They're actively seeking people who have been convicted of crimes in the United States, crimes even as much as murder, or who had committed murder in the country that they came from, and they were allowed in mistakenly. And they're trying to get them off our streets to save Americans from being victimized by these criminals, the Tren de Aragua people, the MS-13 people.
Tom, it's chaos.
Yeah,
There's chaos in these inner cities. It's the amount of violence is amazing.
well,
That these people have to live with every day.
stop and think what this means is that we have an entire political party in this country that is supporting the protection of criminals from our law enforcement. And they're inciting the citizenry to resist our own law enforcement agents. And I'm not sure how we get out of that. I just don't even know how to approach it because there's no reasoning with people.
And the point is, and the same thing I think about all the time is that if when you have enough citizenry, right, enough citizens in a state like Illinois, Chicago, who don't have morals and virtues and values, in other words, cannot tell the difference between right and wrong, then you're in trouble. And that's why, Tom, we can't figure out a solution, because the solution would be to change the government. The solution would be to get those people out. But you can't do that when the citizens won't stand up, not only won't stand up against it, but too many of them are complicit in this and are there for the handouts. And here's another Marxist socialist ideology, and part of what they do, part of their whole plan, they get enough people on food stamps, enough people used to getting some handouts, and they'll just keep going along for those peanuts. And it's really something how we'll put a little carrot out there, and people will choose the carrot versus choosing the right or the good, like we were talking about.
Well, that's a good example is the benefits that these people get too. One of the issues that they brought up, that the shutdown right now, they're saying, well, this is over health care. The one side says they don't want to allow illegal aliens to have health care, and the Republicans say that that's ridiculous. They're trying to allow illegal aliens to have health care, and the contention is that they're not getting health care. Well, that is absolutely false. There is a law, there's a federal law, and every state has a similar law that if you show up at an emergency room in a hospital, they have to provide treatment to you. Well, where are all these illegal aliens going to get health care? They're going to the emergency rooms, jamming the emergency rooms all over in hospitals all over the country, and somebody is paying for that. Well, who do you think's paying for it? They're not
Yeah.
paying for it. So that's jacking up the healthcare costs of everybody. Just the idea of wanting to keep them here, trying to keep them here is going to increase the health costs, and yet they're resisting getting rid of them so we can lower the healthcare costs for
Yeah.
everybody.
And again, when you think about this, there are some innocent people that got wrapped up. These immigrants,
Right.
they weren't all criminals,
No.
obviously. They came here for they heard there was a dream, right? The American dream was alive and well when the Biden administration opened that border. They knew what was going to happen, that these people would flood in, right? With the idea that their life was going to be better. You can't blame some of them for that. So we're in this predicament, but it was intentional because they knew we would get to this point and they thought they would just overwhelm the system and there's nothing we can do about it. And their plan was blown by this crazy guy called Donald Trump, who, talk about violence, was almost assassinated twice. You
Right.
know, Charlie Kirk stood up against this stuff and he was assassinated. I remember John Paul II, when he was only Pope for a couple of years, pushing back against the evil of his day, which were communists. He was a big
Right.
anti-communist
Well,
person,
he
of
came from
course.
Poland.
Yeah, and against abortion and all those types of things, right? And he made it, very clear that we have to take care of we have to take care of the poor and all those types of things. What happened though, Thomas, the socialists came in. They take all the money from the middle class, and you're forced to pay them taxes, not voluntary anymore, but forced to pay them taxes. They want to dole that out, and then they can control this populace. And when you talk about your ICE agents, those immigrants now that came in that didn't commit crimes, at least so far, they say to them, these ICE agents are after you, and they are the Nazis, like you said, and the Gestapo coming in. And those people don't know. And so that's what they hear. So when you say, how are we going to get out of this? It's a conundrum for sure.
Well, because people in power are not telling the truth. I heard Winsome Sears
Who's
in the
awesome.
news this morning who in Virginia saying
Is she
that,
going to run for governor?
yeah, she is running for governor.
Yeah,
And
she
yeah,
is good.
oh yeah.
Really good.
She's going against that Spanberger, who's a leftist. But Winsome Sears says that the Democrat Party is inciting violence in order to win power. That's exactly what's happening. And we're all suffering for it. But the other thing, it isn't the violence that I'm most concerned about. It's the division that we're creating in our country that I'm most concerned about, because I don't see any way out of the division. We live in a post-truth world where truth is viewed as something that doesn't exist, that it's your truth or my truth or his truth, that there's a whole universe of truths out there that you can never come to an agreement on what one truth is.
No,
But there
and
is
and
a truth. There is one
yeah.
truth, and this is, if you can't even get people to agree on that, then there's no need to debate, because where you debate,
I remember Bishop Fulton Sheen and John Paul II, and I'm Catholic, right? So I study their histories. They both warned about this, and they said that the problem they're going to have in the West, the Western world, France, Germany, Italy, the United States, then, is that the decline of the morality of its people will not be able to defend against that evil that comes in. So when they see the evil, to your point, since there is no God, we're atheists. We're practical atheists in this country to a large extent. Certainly in the rest of Western Europe, they are, right?
right? Well,
And so the good thing about this, Tom, is everything that we know about God is true, because when you take them out, there really is no objective truth anymore. And that's this abyss that we're swirling around in.
Well, even, here in the United States, the Barna did a study here that of those people who call themselves Christian, less than 9% of them actually hold a Christian worldview. They call themselves a Christian, but they don't believe in what the Bible says. They modify the Bible to accommodate what they want. Well, this is not a Christian.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because you and I speak to these people,
Yeah,
and they say, "Well, I believe in God," and I say, "Okay, well, what does that mean to you?" To your
right.
point, what
Yeah,
does that mean to you? Well, I believe in Jesus Christ. I said, Satan believes in Jesus
right,
Christ. He's seen him. It's not enough to believe in God, right?
right.
You have to live it. You
Yes.
have to practice it. And to your point, we're not practicing. I see it in the Catholic Church
Well,
all the time.
it isn't just they have to know what to practice. People don't even know what it is that they're supposed to practice. And so they think there are Christians. I had an argument with one of them that they think that it's perfectly okay to, for these for violence against ICE agents because they're Nazis. Well, wait a minute, you're a Christian.
It's the same. It's often the same people that are Catholic or Christians for abortion. And so look at the violence there. If you don't know the difference between a violence of taking the life of a child, you're not going to know the difference of taking a life of an ICE agent.
Right.
I mean, it's all blurred. This is what we're in right now. It's a very exciting time to be alive, but you better get down on your knees and open yourself up to the truth, because otherwise, the good news is, Tom. Here's the good news in all this: if you do stand up for the truth, it's a win-win situation, because you might be able to do some good, and at the end, it's about eternal salvation. And so, we win that eternal salvation. We try to do a little good in the world, and it's over in a blink of an eye, my friend. Right?
Well, I'm not so worried about myself. I know where I'm going, and I'd be just as happy to go at any time. But what I am concerned about is what we're leaving the people behind us, and we're not leaving them in a very good situation. There's still so much work that needs to be done. I feel at a loss sometimes, even what to write, what to say at the Stolen Innocence presentations, in order to not just inform people, but to try to motivate them to get involved, to engage. I've written several articles about criticizing the church, because the pastors just don't take a activist approach to facilitate what the Bible tells us to do and to be and to change the world. We have a motto at our church: love God, love people, change the world. Well, that sounds real good, but what are you doing to change the world? Or you're not
No,
doing
and
anything.
that was my point about when I said a win-win.
Right,
In order to win that eternal salvation, I have to be winning souls for Jesus Christ.
right.
In order to win souls for Jesus Christ, I have to be out in the public square proclaiming. There's a
But it's
saying
more than
from
evangelism. See, this is the thing, that the modern church
yes.
has become focused on evangelism as the way as our primary goal. But our goal isn't social justice, it's justice. We're supposed to help bring about justice in this world, and we're not doing it. We're not actively involved in.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So you want to unpack that just a little bit for people again, because I think that is a confusing term. You hear the word social justice and you think, okay, well, we got to take care of the poor, we got to take care of the homeless, we have to take care of say the mental illness in the world, and that's all true. But to your point, that is not enough. That
No.
we have to bring justice in the world.
Social.
Our country, Tom, has to be a just country. Otherwise, to your point, it's unjust to our children, to our grandchildren, and all the other people that are young growing up in this world that deserve a place to live.
Right. Well, social justice, very simply, is focused on achieving equity. That is not biblical justice. Biblical justice is right and wrong as God defines right and wrong, and we're supposed to be His partners in bringing about justice on earth, not social justice, but justice. And we're not doing it. I even wrote in one of my articles very bluntly that if we had the same pastors today in 1776 that we have today, we would still be under the British Empire, because these pastors today are so weak they won't even go out and challenge abortion. They won't challenge the issue of what's a man and what's a woman. They just want to be totally passive on social issues that are going on, our cultural issues. I'm not talking about equity things. I'm talking about cultural issues, about sex education in schools. Where are they on, they want to, even marriage, where are they on the marriage issue?
Yeah. And again, if somebody's new joining us, there's a difference between, equality and equity,
Right. Yes.
right? We're
Right.
we're, we're all created equal, meaning, we came into the world and we have the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. But that doesn't mean I'm supposed to be rich just because you're rich, because that's exactly how the Marxists do it, right? If we can get enough people jealous of the rich, then you start to create divisions. Jesus was very clear on this. He said, if your treasure is on earth, then that's all you're going to get. Your treasure better be in heaven. And he was poor, and he didn't try to make the people around him rich, did he?
No, and social justice is the creation of Marxists. That it wasn't a creation. It was not a biblical creation. It is a creation of Marxists. And because that's that from each according to their needs, to each according to their, or from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs is what Marx's philosophy is. So, but that's by force. It's not by
That's right.
being generous. God wants us all to be
Yes.
generous, to, to be
Yes.
open with our funds, help people that are in needs, but it has to be voluntary or it's meaningless.
And Tom, that's exactly what we're supposed to do, because when I give money, I'm supposed to do it voluntarily, and then I'm supposed to, it's very gratifying when you build up your communities, when you build up the poor, or when you see the poor around you. When the government takes that money, there's only a small percentage of it. Here I'll give you an example. So we have Vincent de Paul Society in our church, like they do in most churches. We collect money, and 99.6%, I think, in our parish, or 99.3, something like that, goes to poor people. They're all volunteers to do it. There's really no administration except for the bookkeeping, right? We have to keep our records and stuff. So there's a little bit of money that goes out. But it's just, they come in, they make an announcement at the pulpit, and they just say, hey, we'll be in the back of church. Here's what we did last year. Here's the people in our community we're trying to help. That's good stuff. But when I give that money to the government, when I pay my property taxes, Tom, to the Chicago, if I'm at Cook County, paying it to Chicago public schools so they can, fund all of their programs, that's involuntary, and we're actually hurting the people we're supposed to be helping. And then the last thing I'll just say again, when the government takes that money, they set up network after network after network, and I lose track of how much actually gets to the poor, but it's a very small percent that actually gets to the people that need it.
Well, and I love the quote. I use the quote quite often from Eric Hoffer that every great cause starts as a movement, becomes a business, and degenerates into a racket. And you can apply that to the church. You can apply that to every charity that's out there. You can apply that just to the idea of child protection. Child protection in this country today is a racket. There are as many hucksters in the area of child protection as there are in all the race baiters out there, all of the race hustlers that are selling, Ibram Kendi and all these other people trying to say that the white people are the oppressors and, they can't be anything but. So,
Yeah, and getting back to that, now you remind me when you say that, getting back to that 1619 project,
yeah,
they do not teach that it was the same Christians in Great Britain and the United States that took down
right.
slavery.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, there was a little time, there was a progression, but they don't say it was those white Christian guys
that's right.
that fought the Civil War. 600,000 died in that war. Many, many, many of them, most of them were young white guys.
Right.
And on the Union side, they fought for what? To liberate, the black people and keep the Union together. So, they
Well,
don't tell you about that.
I saw a YouTube thing by a black guy over in Africa, and he says, that it wasn't white people that created slavery. He says white people got into it pretty late, actually.
That's right.
And he says, but it was white people that stopped it, or at least tried to. It's still active today, and
Still
there's
active
not
today.
white people involved in the trade today. There's every other.
I don't know if people realize there's more slavery today than there ever was in
Yeah,
history.
right. Yeah.
And when you add in sex trafficking and all those things that happened right here in the United States when we opened the border, we were adding to that slavery. And they're right here in the United States. Young people,
Right.
children, and women being
Well,
sex trafficked.
it isn't just they estimate that it's over 300,000 of these unaccompanied minors got into the were trafficked, wound up being either labor or child or sex trafficked. And they found some of them down at a marijuana grow place down in California. They rounded up a bunch of illegals down there, and 10 of them were children who had been forced to work in this marijuana farm.
Yeah. And you know what? I had a guy on, J.J. Carroll was on. He testified in front of Congress. He wrote a book on this, and nobody has ever come back against him with this. There are what he called child hunters, and child hunters are, he was in the military just as you were. Child hunters are former military guys in essence that go in and really hunt down these kids, look for these kids and try to get them out of sex trafficking. And they described it, Tom, the sickness. Now, so that's one thing to work in a marijuana plant. That's bad enough, right? I mean, these poor kids. But they say when you go down into a basement of a home or a facility where they're sex trafficking these kids, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, he said it's the most despicable thing you've ever seen. He said every single orifice in their bodies, every single one, including their mouths, are full of sores and stuff from guys raping them over and over and over. And he said most of them are drugged because the pain is so bad, they don't want to hear the kids scream, and they have them on drugs. And when they finally wear out their bodies, they're selling them for sex organs or just burying them. He said it's disgusting. The smell is disgusting. The what they're doing to those kids chained up to a bed or tied to a bed. It's sick, Tom. Really
Well, and
sickening.
it isn't only the children either, because there's a lot of these people that just about everybody in the world wants to come to the United States. And people will sell themselves into slavery in order to get here. And a lot of them are doing it. And they wind up becoming, at best, indentured servants for years, at worst, slaves of whoever brings them in.
Okay, well, what else? Is there anything else on your radar before I let you go here today? I mean, we haven't solved a ton of problems, but I think just by opening this up, to your point, everybody, we've been saying this for a long time, Tom. You know, if you're going to save your own soul, you got to step up and do something good
Right.
in the world. You can't just be apathetic. Jesus said, you know, either be hot or cold, either be good or evil.
Right.
If you're lukewarm, if you're apathetic, I'm going to spew you out. So people are going to be surprised, I think. You know, people are going to be surprised. I hope I'm not one of them, right? You better have done something with the time and the talents that I've given you to bring some good into the world.
Yeah, it's like Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, anybody that's out there, you better do more than just exercise cheap grace,
Mm.
because that isn't advancing the kingdom in any way at all.
And it takes courage today. It really takes courage. I mean, it always took courage, I think. You see Charlie Kirk, you know what happened to him, you know, but Charlie said before he died, he said, I'm not afraid of dying. He said, I'm afraid of not living the way God wanted me to live and to proclaim the gospel. So
People
it
aren't
was an amazing young man, you
See,
know.
this is the thing that's so frustrating to me. People are not being called to be Charlie Kirk. But what they can do is they can run for office against people like that woman in District 300 that tweeted, "Karma's a bitch," in response to Charlie Kirk's death. That woman should not be in any public office now or ever, and yet we are allowing people.
She was the president.
Right,
That's a local, you know, for us, we're in the Chicagoland
right.
area. It's a local school board. She was the chairman of that school board. From my understanding, people protested. They were on both sides of that issue. But anyway, she was taken out of being the board chairman,
Well,
but she wasn't taken off the board.
she's still on the board, and whoever
Yeah.
people need to run we need to get Christians in these positions, and people that will act like Christians, not say, "Well, I'm not supposed to be a Christian in public office." Well, yes, you are.
You know, and don't think you're underqualified, because if you stand up, if you know the truth, you'll learn on the job, and there'll be other people there, and there's training programs, there's all kinds of ways to get up to speed on that. So it's not like you just get thrown to the wolves on there. So by the time you get elected, you start running. By the time you get elected, there's courses out there. The Heritage Foundation does a great job. There's other foundations out there that do a great job of training people. And so, yeah, if you feel called to do it, don't let fear hold you back.
Well, no, don't wait for the call. You actually have to follow God's bigger call. We're supposed to become engaged in the world, whether you feel like it or not. This
Yeah,
is not something like, "Oh, well, I don't feel like it today." No, I don't
yeah.
feel like getting up some days, but I still get up.
Yeah,
And so
and to you know, to another point, you know, I may not have the time or inclination to run for office, but you can certainly find out who you should be out there for, and you can certainly canvass and help those people get elected. I mean, that's the very least. You know, most people that don't even vote in the school board elections, Tom.
Right. Yeah, I know. There's how many
At least
people
vote.
I know many people who don't vote at all, who don't vote about anything.
Yeah. And then you wonder, and so back to your conundrum.
Right.
Why can't you find a solution? Well,
Right.
okay, we did answer it now. We answered it
Yeah.
because we have too many apathetic people. And John Adams said that. Madison said it. This republic is only for moral, religious people. And Benjamin Franklin said, "Yeah, I'm giving you a republic if you can hold it. If you can hold it, you
Well, we
know."
got to we need some more intolerant pastors in the pulpit though too, to tell
Yeah, well,
people,
good
hey,
luck with
call them.
that, Tom, because I've been saying that in the Catholic
Yeah.
Church. We had a woke Pope Francis. I had high hopes for Leo the 14th, but it looks like it isn't taking him that long. It looks like he's following in the footsteps of Francis, which is really disappointing. And so what is the solution to that? It's for all of us to step up. It's for all of us to step up. We have to fill those shoes. That's why I think, Tom, it's an exciting time to be alive, because you realize that, G.K. Chesterton, when they asked him what's wrong with Christianity, he said, "I am." And to your point, you have to step up and you have to take the responsibility. There's no knight in shining armor riding on a big white stallion in public office or in the church
Right.
that can rescue us without us. Without us.
Yeah, well, that's what's on my mind these days anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One thing I want people to watch for, again, it's a Bishop Sheen thing when the communists were coming in, and he saw this. He saw this coming in, and he knew it was going to continue unless people stood up, and we didn't. And he said 3 things will happen. We have reason and intellect and free will. That's who we are as human beings when we have some grace. He said your reason will become unreasonable. You become irrational, and that's what we're seeing out there. He said the second thing will happen is you'll see violence. And he said you saw it right away. Genesis, Adam and Eve turn away from God. The next generation, Cain actually kills Abel, and that's the good, right? He was offering a sacrifice to God. He didn't have to kill his brother. His brother wasn't doing anything to him, but he saw the good, and that was the evil. It started right away. He said, so the second thing you'll see is violence. And the third thing, he said, it's always an atheist. And he said, it's not an atheist, he said again, isn't someone who doesn't believe in God. He believes in God, sees the good, and is going to be violent. And that's what you're seeing against the churches. Burning churches in Canada, in the United States, all over the world now. You have people attacking Christians in Africa and murdering them by the scores in these churches, and so you see the violence. So those 3 things, irrational, violence, and atheists. And don't think atheists don't believe in God. They don't believe in the good, huh? They want to throw God out so that they can live as they want. And so this is the reason we don't understand it all, Tom, is because this is really a battle between good and evil.
Well, I know it's hard to fight it. It's hard to be involved in that battle when so few people want to join in and fight as well. They'd rather go to their weekend cabin.
Hey, look at it. Started with 12, and they were very poor. They were fishermen, and they threw a tax collector in there just for the heck of it. St. Paul himself was persecuting Christians, actually imprisoning them. Some were murdered. We saw the beginning when right off the bat, he saw witnessing right to the Stephen, the first martyr, and they put their cloaks at his feet to get the okay from him to stone Stephen, our first martyrs. And then he became a great apostle. So where does it start? It starts on your knees. It starts on opening yourself up, because you're going to get the courage, the grace, the fortitude, all of the virtues that we're going to need to be able to step into this arena. So yeah, start on your knees and then go out, Tom. It's the old-fashioned way, my friend.